Beautiful packed room. Welcome to dLab. This is the space that you're inhabiting right now. This is as full as I've ever seen it, and that's a special thing. And what's really special about today is we basically have three layers of this sort of Cardano ecosystem represented. We have IOHK, we have Emergo, and we have dLab itself, which is another sort of Cardano-assisted project. But what is this event? What is this community? I want to introduce you to Unblocked. This is our second event in New York City and our fourth ever anywhere else. We run chapters in San Francisco and in New York. And the vibe of the whole event is basically, you've seen fireside chats before. We like to lean into the parts that are a little more interesting, a little more juicy, a little bit less talked about. So at these Unblocked events, what we typically try to do is to have some real talk about emerging tech. That might mean some real interesting tactics that people actually use to scale things up. It might mean some things like the sort of personal psychology of a founder who had real ups and downs, real heartbreaks if the company failed, real beautiful recovery when the venture fund finally came in. And we like to talk about the future, and whether that is a technical future or so one more philosophically inclined of how we might interact, how we might communicate, how we might trade. These are all features that really go under that Unblocked umbrella here and in San Francisco. Today's a really special event because not only are all of you guys here, it's a really large one, but we really do have some luminaries from the sort of crypto field. But first, I want to make sure that we give proper thanks to the folks that helped put this whole thing together. And so for that, I want to hand off to Paul at dLab. Give him a hand.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Want to formally welcome to the dLab office. dLab is a venture studio launched in partnership with SOSV and Emergo. Couple of housekeeping items. The bathroom is through this exit door to the right, and you'll see the bathroom on your left. One of our startups today is going to be featured, short talk before Charles goes on, and it's a really good example of how blockchain is being used to solve real-world problems. So with that, I'd like to pass it along to Michael and Tristan. Thank you.
Awesome. So one of the things that I definitely like to do is, blockchain is a technology that right now often exists behind terminals and in our heads. And I think something that's really important is to showcase, whenever possible, some real-world applications. And so for that, I'd love if you could tell us about you and what you're working on real fast.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tristan. I'm the co-founder of Sempo. We help NGOs distribute money in crisis zones. So yeah.
Where did that name come from? It's kind of a cool name.
Yeah, so Sempo is the nickname of a Japanese diplomat in World War II, so Shun Sugihara, and he issued 70,000 visas to Jewish refugees, and we honored him by naming our company that.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you guys are doing direct giving, you're putting some of that and assisting it with sort of blockchain technology. Firstly, why direct giving? Why is this problem worth really looking into? What is it that got you really passionate about it?
I mean, we focus on the cash transfer space. Cash transfers are transparent, they're fast, they're efficient, and most importantly, they're actually empowering people who have just been affected by a humanitarian crisis. The NGO space today is quite opaque. You don't really know what's going on, where cash really flips that on its head. I mean, I got into it personally because, I've been starting businesses ever since I can remember. And for me, having the opportunity to do that was, that is in itself a form of privilege. And I want to try and create the same level of opportunity and financial opportunity for people in, humanitarian crisis and people just in emerging markets, really.
Yeah, and I mean, it really speaks to me that we're using a technology that really is on the cutting edge, something that often demands you have access to the latest training resources, the latest technology to actually build on it, some of the latest sort of tooling and community around you, and that you're using it to actually empower people who are at the very bottom of the pyramid. But at the end of the day, why do you need blockchain to do that? Why is that something that you guys have chosen to use technology for this?
I mean, I'll preface this with my co-founder is a massive blockchain skeptic. He's a mathematician by trade and astrophysicist, and he still doesn't fully believe in what we're doing. And I think that sort of works in our favor because I'm a bit more interested in it and believe philosophically that it really has the potential to change the world. I know that's obviously said a lot. the reason we use it is, I mean, when we started this company, we didn't start it as a blockchain company. We started it with the idea that we could use data to better improve humanitarian responses. And when we were trying to get money to people, we were able to speak to them. We were able to identify that, you know, these people were affected by crises, but we couldn't actually get money to them. And that happened out of the Philippines, where, you know, only 30% of the population has a bank account. The rest don't. And those other, you know, 70%, they're the ones who are most likely to be affected by a humanitarian crisis. So when we were trying to get money to them, we just couldn't. There was no way. So what we did effectively is built what in like hindsight is just a closed loop cash transfer programming system, basically a vouchering system. And that's sort of like level one of what we've built, basically. It's how do we get funds to people who don't have identity documents, aren't able to pass KYC, but we still want to give them the same level of access to purchase goods and just like the rest of us.
Yeah, how does that actually work in practical sense? So I am, let's see, I'm posted up in a refugee camp. I finally have been lucky enough to be the recipient of some sort of direct aid. How do I receive that aid? How do I consume it?
So one of the most important principles of humanitarian aid is you want it to be super inclusive. You know, blockchain products today are really built for the top 1% of the world. You know, you have to have a high level of literacy, you have to have a strong internet connection, you have to know what a 12-word mnemonic is. So what we've built today is it is a hosted solution, but it means that we can do SMS transfers similar to M-Pesa. So you can just send, you literally type in like any feature phone, like a Nokia, you type send 12 to, and the vendor number, which might be like a three letter code, or like 4 letters. You can also access credits via like a tap to pay card and then just an Android app. And that's what we're most excited about, because there's so much you can do once you have beneficiaries basically onboarded. You know, you can start accessing credit, you can start doing so many other things.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that people worry about when they're trying to do direct transfers is, hey, I'm not really sure what they're going to do with the money. You know, you might give somebody on the other side of the world $100. You're wondering if that $100 would go a little further here, just because you say might put it into a charity that might allocate it in a particular fashion. What do you guys do to increase transparency, increase sort of adherence to, you know, that money being well spent?
I mean, I'm a big believer that, you know, if you're giving someone money who has just gone through like a humanitarian crisis. For example, we were on the border of Syria, you know, working with Lebanon's largest NGO, and like I was amazed by how happy, you know, Syrian refugees can be, even though they've literally lost everything. And I think if like the beauty of cash transfers, if you do it right, is that it is about them having the choice to spend it on what they want. You know, if you're just going through like a terrible situation, you're not going to go and buy like things that aren't productive for you. And Give Directly, which is sort of like my hero in the space, started by Michael Fay, they basically pioneered cash transfers and, you know, UBI research. And I mean, they've shown through like statistical studies that people spend it on the right things. So we provide the tools for NGOs to like have high level data of what's been bought in terms of like, okay, is it perishables? Is it clothing? You know, like very high level data, but it's nothing like too personal, because I think like privacy is a basic human right.
Yeah, definitely. And you're doing that by effectively crediting the actual store where they can consume the goods versus the individual. Directly,
so the vendors like provide us with basic like categorical data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it really does seem like an interesting blockchain solution, because now you have a way of assigning identity, you have a way of transferring funds at a low cost, and you have a way of sort of assuring analytics throughout the entire process. And so this is all well and good in theory, but can we talk about you actually doing this in, you know, boots on the ground, real world fashion?
Yeah, so far we've launched in Iraqi Kurdistan, Greece, Lebanon on the border of Syria. So we went there for 2 weeks and worked with the local community. We then actually hired a Syrian refugee there to help us roll out this program that was working with Lebanon's largest NGO. I mean, I think a big philosophy of our company is you need to actually go out there and speak to your end user and understand what their problems are, because they're a lot different than when you're sitting in New York writing code. It's, you know, when we went there for 2 weeks, the first week we didn't even show any of the products we'd built. You know, the first week was just just talking to the community, and it's just basic human-centered design. And I think that's the best way to build application layer products. We've also got an upcoming pilot with Oxfam Australia in Vanuatu, which we're really excited about, and we'll do the same process there.
Can you say more about that? I mean, it's a recognizable name. I think Oxfam, some of us have heard of. What is that going to look like as a campaign?
So yeah, we'll probably have a DAI address where people. So we're using DAI for the pilot, or likely to use DAI, and we'll probably have like a DAI Ethereum address where you can donate to, and then you can see end to end. Okay, here's the master wallet. It's been distributed to people. They've spent that. It's gone to a vendor, and then been cashed out or continue to be transacted within like a local community. So that's the plan. We're still doing design sessions to see, you know, what is actually requirements for Vanuatu. I mean, we're working with people who have literally never had a bank account before.
Yeah.
They've never had access to traditional financial services. There are definitely informal financial services that exist, but not traditional.
Sure. And I mean, if you guys roll this out and it becomes something that's adopted widely in the local area, then you stand to become sort of the economic backbone there, perhaps even helping them skip the entire financial system. So, hell of a thing.
Well, that's sort of our secret. In a way, we're working with NGOs to sort of bootstrap new payment networks, you know, proxy financial systems. NGOs are the ones who understand these communities the most. They work with them every day on a daily basis. And we believe that, you know, when we're able to basically help them do their job better, you know, cash transfers are becoming the norm in the humanitarian space. Everyone is starting to do them. If we're able to help them do their job better of delivering cash to people in need, we believe that, like, we'll be able to build proxy financial systems in these communities who have never had access to, you know, bank accounts before, never had access to credit before, other than informal kinds. So yeah, that's sort of our company's secret is, like, we'll be able, you know, where you look at blockchain wallets today, they're impossible to use if you're like uneducated, or you are illiterate, or you just don't have internet all the time, right? So we were in Lebanon and we found that most Syrian refugees, they had a smartphone, they had an Android phone, a basic Android phone. They had internet at the community center or at their home, but they didn't have it when they went to buy something from the vendor. So when you need to be able to make offline payments. So right now, the way we do that is similar to like a Google Authenticator code. You know, it's the same like two-factor auth. You have a QR code that changes every 10 seconds, and then a vendor can scan it who has internet, or most of the time they have internet. We're also exploring using a wrapped smart contract that actually does that, but in a self-sovereign manner, which is exciting. But I think, you know, you don't come to these sort of realizations or understand these problems unless you get out there on the field, at least from an application layer.
So you're putting boots on the ground, you're actually deploying technology, and you're helping people out. And so I think maybe there's a few folks in the room who are like, hell yeah, let's support this guy. What would help you right now?
I mean, I think we just closed our most recent round with dLab and SOSV, but, you know, if you're an investor who shares our vision that we can change the way humanitarian aid is done, and at the same time start to build these proxy financial networks in places that literally have no payment rails today, then I'd love to start, you know, building that relationship. I'm going to push
a little bit because everyone knows you're fundraising. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
But let's push a little bit on that and ask if there's any introductions or any partnerships that you think anyone in the room might have a connection to, and I wonder if they'd be willing to connect you to somebody. Who's the dream connection?
I mean, any of the top 10 NGOs in the United States would be fantastic. You know, we're also working with Mercy Corps and I mean, I'd love a connection into Give directly as well. They're like sort of our heroes. So
Right. Cool.
they're like the number one NGO we'd like to work with.
Hell yeah. Tell people how to contact you.
So my email is tristan@sempo.ai or .io, both work. So yeah.
Sweet. Well, we'll find you later on. In the meantime, we're going to get Paul back up here and give the people what they want.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.